Elon went to Washington, you know? He went to Washington and he went there with a plan, and Doge was his plan to meme and cut the green. And he cut about $50 billion, much of it unconstitutionally and illegally. Got a bunch of people fired from their jobs, including consummate professionals who were good at their jobs, like at the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which was created and authorized by Congress. But he's the richest man in the world, so I guess he could just, skip Congress. That doesn't matter. While also claiming to defend American values and the Constitution, as somebody, again, who doesn't seem to have a strong grasp of them. Either way, he cut up the CFPB, which is an organization that just so happens to regulate many of his organizations. He cut up USAID, and he went around with his little interns trying to see wherever he can cut and he can cut. And hey, he probably found some actual waste, fraud, and abuse and did cut it. But as speaking somebody who's surrounded by people in the DC area who work for a living in public service, a lot of those people who were cut were not pencil pushers who did nothing but sort file from point A to point B, but were people who were doing work on the ground. And with the USAID cuts, I mean, there were people stranded in foreign countries without flights back because the people who were supposed to organize the flights back were fired before they could organize the flights back. So I don't think the way that the cuts were done were legal. I don't think the way that the cuts were done were constitutional. I don't think they were done competently. I don't think they were done with expertise. And Elon Musk has this bad track record of going into every topic like he's an expert, whether he's talking about the future of drone warfare, we'll see no more jets, or whether he's talking about, oh, let's save these kids from this underwater cave with my submarine. And then one of the submarine divers who actually saved the kids says, that's actually not going to work. So he just calls him a pedophile, as a normal person apparently does when you get this much money. And so he goes into every topic like he's the expert and then falls flat on his face. And this is particularly dangerous when you're talking about a government that spans so many different institutions and agendas. And Hutch, I saw the raid. I want to thank you for the raid. Absolutely beautiful. I do appreciate it. Watched that Vadim conversation recently. Thanks for the aneurysm, you bastard. I'm sorry, man, but dude, that hurt. That hurt. Anyway, I wanted to check out this Elon clip where he basically says that Trump's new big beautiful bill basically destroys the work that he did. I mean, when the journalist puts this idea forward, he kind of like sighs and accepts it, which is a lot to say about about all the work you put in to get the man elected, and now he's adding $3 to $4 trillion to the deficit you panicked about. But hey, maybe if you listen to any of the people warning you on the campaign trail that backing a man with so much money to cut the deficit when he expanded the deficit by 25% of the deficit is just his deficit. 25% of the total deficit. That's a lot for 4 years. That's a substantial sum, especially considering that on the campaign trail for his first term, he said he was going to get rid of all the debt in 4 years. Okay, just wild con man, just like swanky ass, like just the worst of con. I mean, this is the type of stuff that would make Ponzi blush. And he put his money behind him, and now he can't act surprised. He can pretend to be surprised all he wants. Maybe he is. That would indicate again him overjudging his expertise in politics and getting played for all of his money by Donald Trump, which is not only did it to him, but a lot of the crypto community as well. If you saw that pathetic recent dinner, and now he's dealing with the consequences. And if you look at like Elon's recent Twitter, I mean, we'll take a look at it in a second. I think the dude's actually like low key depressed.
So, I was like disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the Doge team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, like, everything he's done on Doge gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both. My personal opinion.
Very libertarian philosophy, and one that does not really match this bill. I mean, the argument that has been made is that the tax cuts from this bill will make up the deficit in the long term through growth. But this is what they said in the first term, and that didn't bear out. And the deficit increased under Donald Trump. The deficit went up under Donald Trump. And so if that was the argument first term and we're just doing it again a second time, look, you cut taxes, you decrease revenue. If you have taxes up to such a ridiculous point that you're decreasing economic activity, then maybe some decreasing of taxes could lead to some increased revenue for the IRS. But when you're trying to cut the IRS, the people who collect the taxes, while also cutting taxes at the same time, it's not a recipe for success. And we were not at a point where, cutting taxes actually increased revenue. And that's why the Congressional Budget Office is talking about a $3 to $4 trillion increase of our national debt. We're piling on debt towards our future generations, as many fiscal conservatives said. And so if you have any hint of fiscal conservatism in your soul, this should all pain you immensely. Nina, thank you so much for the raid of 19. 2 nice, friendly raids back to back. I appreciate it. It should pain you at the depths of your soul if you're a fiscal libertarian. But there's zero care within the Republican Party outside of a few insurgents that were eventually shouted down in the House, shouted into submission, sometimes with just pork barrel politics for their district when it comes to like certain tax credits and such. I mean, they didn't bring down the deficit. The deficit is going to still be there. The debt is going to increase due to this. And the cuts that they did make, like the 10 million people that are going to lose their Medicaid insurance, are not sufficient to make it up. And so if you care about fiscal conservatism, actually, if that's a real thing that you believe, if that's a real thing in your soul, you should hate this big, beautiful bill. Either because you believe the taxes need to be increased in order to increase revenue, or more spending cuts need to be made, or a combination of both, where you do spending cuts and increase taxes. You want to be fiscally responsible, talk about fiscally responsible politics. But here's the problem. And here's the thing that you're running into, is that Trump doesn't care, because Trump is a con man chameleon, just like his mentor, Roy Cohn. And so there's 2 things that are disincentivizing Trump from caring about the deficit, okay? The first thing is political opportunism. If you don't increase the deficit, you know who's going to increase the deficit? The Democrats are going to increase the deficit. And they're going to spend it on gay, and they're going to spend it on minorities, and they're going to spend it on Joe Biden gender reassign. They're gonna whatever. They're gonna spend it on whatever their woke priorities are, when we could spend it on the things we care about, like moats on the border, or fentanyl sniffing dogs near the Canadian border, or our Golden Dome air defense system, which the government's asking for $175 billion for in over 3 years. That's the first installment, before even talking about what the Canadians would have to spend to also take part, unless we're going to end up subsidizing them for that, because the Canadians are not taking part in this. The only way they would is if we subsidize them into doing it, that only increases the price tag for the first 3 years, let alone what comes after the first 3 years. Trump is not a deficit hawk. And so not only is it just he doesn't care on a personal level, but if he doesn't spend this money and take this debt on, then Harris would have, or Pete Buttigieg will in the future, or Gavin Newsom, or AOC, or Joe Biden in the Emperor of Man chair, or whoever it is. They're going to take it. And so in order to please my backers, in order to please those who got me into office, in order to please my political constituents, I am going to take on the debt for my causes, whether it be border security, whether it be defense spending, whether it be aid to Israel, whether it be Golden Dome, whether it be any of Trump's mega projects. So there's an incentive, a political incentive, to basically, fiscal responsibility is nice and everything, but how many votes is that earning you? And that puts us into point 2, and that is fiscal responsibility is not popular. And when I say it's not popular, that's not to say that if you were to ask people, should the government be responsible with money? Uh, the answer is yes, they would. But if you were to ask Americans, hey, in order to, not decrease the debt, should we increase taxes? Back in the 90s or in the 80s, in that time period, the number was like 20%. Now, we're talking like 45 to 50% of Americans don't believe that we should increase taxes, even if it means we're just going to increase the debt endlessly. Didn't say endlessly, but increase the debt. And so that shows that they don't want to pay the taxes. And that shows that fiscal prudence might not be a big issue right now. And when you poll people on top 10 issues, there's no poll where the national debt breaks the top 10 that I have seen. There is no poll where the deficit breaks the top 10 that I have seen. There is no poll where this continuous propping up of that debt number up through the ceiling through Republican, fiscally conservative presidents is of a big enough concern to voters that it's going to motivate them at the voting booth. And so this is the stuff that is the concern of statesmen. This is the stuff that is the concern of the people who are thinking about their children's future. This is the stuff that are concerns of the political hobbyist or the person who focuses on politics, the person who might go to every single city council meeting. But when it comes to the people who come in and punch the democracy card every 2 to 4 years, usually 4 years, it's not the thing that motivates them to get to the voting booth, because our status as the global reserve currency has given us a sort of, how you could say, je ne sais quoi, a fiscal pussy behavior is, I don't know how to put it, but it puts us in a state where we just refuse to be fiscally responsible because our Federal Reserve status means our currency holds a certain strength. That means we can take much, 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 much more debt, which is cool, which is great, which is something which I would abuse. I'm not saying we shouldn't even abuse that power. If we have a power that other people don't have, I mean, we'd be stupid not to abuse it to some capacity. But it's not an endless capacity to abuse. And Moody downgrading U.S. debt is not good. And if the debt gets more and more expensive, and when we talk about how 10-year yields have been shifting, it's of some concern. And I think that's the big thing that really scared Trump off of a lot of this tariff stuff. It makes the taco bet a strong bet. Trump always chickens out. Because once that debt continues to increase in value, those yields go up, they accumulate. That means the cost of servicing the debt accumulates. That means the total amount of our budget, of our income that is going towards debt continues to increase. And we're going towards a path where, our debt's going to be the biggest thing that our government is paying for, more than the armed forces, more than healthcare, and you get into a spiraling debt crisis. And that's very hard to do when you're the world reserve currency. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but this is the stuff that I thought that, Republicans would continue to warn about for decades because it was where they were standing on principle. But now I have to, because I feel like I have to stand up and say, hey, the piggy bank isn't endless, even if we got a special extra gold piggy bank because of the U.S. greenback and the mighty flag of the U.S. dollar flying high as our flag. But here we are. And look, it'd be one thing if we were spending this money on massive investment into repairing our roads and bridges, or, putting some more money into Amtrak so we could have more services into more communities, or trying to, improve Medicaid and expand Medicare coverage. But no, it's tax cuts, in a lot of cases, largely for the wealthy, that they say is going to somehow come back to fix the debt, which it isn't. It's going to grow the economy enough to remove the amount of debt we're taking on, which it won't. And to service these tax cuts, we're going to the programs that service the most vulnerable, the people who are going to go out and spend their money because they don't have the money to spend, the people that when we put out that $2,000 check to American working class people, where did that money go? It mostly went to essentials. That's what studies found. The vast majority of it went to its essentials. Is that going to be more beneficial towards the economy? Or is cutting taxes for the richest people going to be more beneficial for the economy? I genuinely think that when it comes to the health of the U.S. economy, the health of the average worker is more important than the wealth of the richest among us. And until that is the guiding philosophy of the U.S. president, his economic philosophy is bound to fail. Anyway, people were commenting stuff. Let me respond.